When it comes to the whole thing with Resplendent, you have units that definitely benefit from it a lot, who could definitely use the help. You got Sophia, you got your you got your Sheetas, you got etc, etc. And then there are just some units that don't really benefit from the Resplendent, as much as that sounds contradictory, because they are getting more stats, but their performance isn't really changing. And that's someone like Olin. And a lot of that also just has to do with their overall stat line. If it's already in such a position, the extra 2 stats to everything can only do so much. Which is why I was thinking, what units should get Resplendent, and will they benefit at all? And to answer that, I picked out 3 units that I think would benefit to a good degree. And then at the end, I also have one I personally want to see, but you can't guess who though. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's discuss 3 units that I think would benefit from a Resplendent the most. Starting off, we have Bowie of all units. Bowie as a unit has a lot of work to do if you want him to get going. Because a base attack of 29 and 27 speed is not good, especially in this day and age. Thankfully, his preferred weapon is actually really decent, with it being just close foil, but instead of extra stats, he gets Raven, which can be good in some instances for sure. And because he has close foil in his weapon, he can essentially just run any A slot he wants, which is great because then he has the liberty of running something like Unity and getting his and boosting up his res even more. He can run solo 4s, he can run pretty much anything in the A slot. The problem I find with him is that you'll usually have to invest into his attack more often than not, even though he does have workable speed, because of the fact that his attack stat at base is really bad. Even with the free A slot, which can help bolster that role, it's not really enough. Which is why I think if they gave him a Resplendent, gave him 2 extra sets to everything, then he would have way more flexibility in his IV. Granted, 31 base is still not really the highest, but remember, because he has a free A slot, he can run anything that bolsters his attack even more. Likewise, he can run stuff that also bolsters his speed and resistance, because his resistance could use a bit of work, but Unity should help alleviate that issue. Now, will he be perfect by any means? No, but the extra stats can also help him become a really decent melee tank, and he's already decent at that, he just lacks the attack to finish off foes. But with, let's say, max merges, max flowers, and assume you invest into him like crazy, he can have a decent amount of attack and speed to work with, which can honestly turn him into a really decent Aether Raids offense tank. And because he's infantry too, he can run stuff like null follow-up, null counter disrupt, etc, etc. I guess the only problem you may find with him is that because his red stat is still, it's not bad at max investment with attack res unity and possibly speed res solo, but he may still get prone to one-shots from strong hitting mages. But beyond that, he would be a really solid Aether Raids offense unit. And then next, we have Tsubaki. Now, Tsubaki is definitely one of those units I think has a lot of potential with a Resplendent, even though his base attack is abysmal at 25. He does have a super boon, which can be at 29, which is still low, very low. But he does have a really decent speed and defense stat, which means he can work off of Wyvern Flight. And we also have his preferred weapon in Golden Naginata, which is effectively just a Slang Lance that grants Spectrum 3 as long as he has lower attack than the foe, and it grants 7 true damage per hit if his HP is above 70%, which is absolutely easy to work with because of his high defense. If he's targeted by res, he's done, no question. But really the only units like that are going to be dragons, and dragons are kind of rare as is, so he should be fine. Even so, with a Resplendent and let's say max merges plus attack, he still only hits 53 attack, and this is at the start of combat. So even with Resplendent and a super boon in attack, there's a very good chance that he's still not going to miss his condition because his attack is still really low. That being said, it's not low enough for him not to Gale Force. Now the idea here is you can have him Gale Force because of his slang and his high speed. Heavy blade checks are still going to be kind of hard. However, when you pair it with stuff like Sturdy Impact, Attack Defense Rhyme, and the Spectrum 3 he gets from his weapon, you should be able to trigger his Gale Force at a consistent pace. Tsubaki pretty much kind of just ends up like a big stat ball. However, because of the slang and the wyvern flight and all the other skills he could get, he can honestly become a decent Gale Force unit. And I think right now, even though he can run all these skills anyway, I think the problem right now is going to be those heavy blade checks because his attack is really low. So I think the extra 2 to attack is going to make a big difference. But yeah, I think he has a lot of potential to be a really decent Gale Force unit if he got a Resplendent. And then finally, we have Korin. Female Korin to be exact. Female Korin has a pretty decent preferred weapon for 8th Raid's offense because of how it works off debuffs. It's pretty easy to get debuffs going for the opposing team because of all the skills and mythics we have in the game, especially the free ones. You can run like Tamari Air and get that going. Especially after combat, she inflicts -7 attack and speed on the foe and foes within 2 spaces, which means she can continue to trigger her breath even more. However, it is imperative that if you are going to run her, you have to run a support unit with some kind of sabotage support, because not having it for the first combat is going to be a problem. And just like Tsubaki, she also shares a super boon in attack. I think that's where another issue lies with Korin, is her attack, because 27 base is also not really good. Thankfully it can be patched with Gloom Breath, but that only goes so far. However, another point of contention also has to do with her res stat. Her res stat is one of the lowest for a dragon, which is also a problem because she can't run stuff like Dragon Wall, which would be really great for someone like her. And you could try and make it work at max merges, where at plus 10, 15 flowers she could get 28, and thankfully it doesn't just work off of visible, it works off of all sorts of other stuff. So you can run sabotages, so on and so forth, but it's very tough, especially on Ashta season, where you'll be running into units that could potentially be blessed by Mira, which just increases it further. If you're going to use Korin, you're not going to use her on Ashta, mainly because of Mira and the fact that there aren't any Ashta res mythics, which is a problem in and of its own. So you'd probably turn Korin into a generalist tank with Dragon Wall and Tamari Air support, as the Light Blessing from Air can help her patch up her really abysmal res. That being said, with a Resplendent, she can at least boost that up to 30, she could get more speed, she could get a lot more defense. Well, no, it's only 2. She could get extra attack, which can help her deal with foes even better. And she might be capable of running Dragon Wall. Although, what's probably going to be better in the end is probably something like Null Follow-Up or Null Counter Disrupt, depending on how you want to use her. You could probably run her with Distant Counter and Null Follow-Up, which would be really nice. You could run her with Speed Res Solo to at least patch up the res, even if you're not using Dragon Wall. That wouldn't be a bad idea either. Personally, Null Follow-Up is probably going to be better in her case anyway, because it will be a lot more consistent than Dragon Wall. But even so, even without it, the extra stats that she would get from the Resplendent would easily help her in her tanking capabilities anyway. And because Gloom Breath works off of penalties on the foe, she can easily raise up her stats more thanks to that. So I would say Bowie, Tsubaki, and Korin definitely would benefit a lot from some sort of Resplendent bonus. And I think at least out of all the ones we have right now, they wouldn't be wasted. At least the Resplendent would give them more of an ability to perform. And I think if any unit were to get a Resplendent next, it should be one of those 3. And then for the fun round, we get to do Lazlo. Now Lazlo is basically a generalist tank, and he's already super amazing as is, like arguably one of the best 4-stars we have in the game right now. So really it'd be more of a pipe dream if we could. But yeah, no, what you could easily do with him is, if he were to get a Resplendent, you'd basically be able to do disadvantage even better because he's able to hit harder. And his base attack is already really good, on top of his 19 might sword. And of course, if you want to invest into his speed, the extra 2 sets will go a long way too, because he can end up going from 37 to 39, and it just gets way too easy to stack beyond there, because especially on Ash's season, running a Plumeria automatically makes it +4. If the Sabotage goes off, that's another 7, and then a Dance grants another 3. Speed is way too easy to stack, but that's aside the point. The point being is that he would just become more of a generalist tank. But yeah, that's the Resplendent I want to see personally. I don't think he really needs it all too much. It would be really nice if he got it. But yeah, Bowie, Tsubaki, Korin are the 3 units I think should get a Resplendent next, as I believe they're the units that would benefit the most. But what do you think? Do you think other units deserve it? Who do you want to see as a Resplendent? And do you think the units I picked were good? Maybe you have better suggestions, you can let me know down below. Until then, thanks for watching.